I just want to say hello to everyone and thank you so much for joining us for the Waste Less and Save More workshop. This is the second workshop of 3 that we're offering this month in our journey to zero waste. This workshop series has been made possible by Ontario Trillium Foundation and Regional Municipality of York. So we just want to say a big thank you there. I'm Marissa, and we have Jess over here from York Region Food Network too. And also Rebecca Alton, she's waving at you there. We'll be facilitating part of our workshop a little bit later. So I just want to go over a couple of housekeeping details with everybody since we're on Zoom. We are recording this workshop, so for your privacy and security, we have turned off all cameras and microphones other than our own. If you do have any questions during the presentation, please type them out in the chat, and we'll have a question and answer period at the end and read them all out and address everything that comes up. If typing is a little bit much for you, you can just raise your hand in the chat box there and let us know that you do have a question, and we'll call out your name at the end, and we'll be happy to unmute you and you can ask your question in person. If anyone has any access needs, please let us know also in the chat box, and we'll do our very best to accommodate, okay? So this series on zero waste is a really great transition from our compost workshop series, which just finished up last month. We've run many workshops over the last few months in promotion of the launch of the York Region Food Network Compost Learning Hub, which we're super excited about. This is going to be an initiative that will provide opportunities for folks to participate in educational workshops like this one, to share ways to incorporate waste-free practices at home. The Hub's physical space, it will have a physical space, will launch in 2021, where we'll offer in-person tours, fingers crossed, and workshops and a bunch of community events. But until then, we're going to be hosting them online through forums like this.
Yeah, so although we might be connecting virtually right now, just due to COVID, again, we just encourage everyone to take a moment and acknowledge where we are at the moment. So Marissa and I and Rebecca, we're currently in what's known as York Region, Ontario. And it's our basic responsibility to understand and to learn about the history of the land that we're on. So currently we live and work on the traditional territories of the Haudenosaunee, the Anishinaabe, and the Wendat people. And that's the Williams Treaty territory. And we just like to acknowledge the closest First Nation community to us, and that's the Chippewas of Georgina Island. So they're about an hour and 15 minutes northeast of us. And so many of our practices and many of our like organizational structures and the seeds we plant and the foods that we eat and the foods that we grow, the methods of harvesting and educating and all of that, these came from the process of colonization. So it's just important for us to hold this understanding in our interactions and our engagements. And it's our responsibility to just respect and take care of the land. And so as we go into the content of this workshop, let's just continually investigate that and like bring that to the forefront as we go through this.
Awesome, thank you, Jess. So without further delay, I'm going to introduce our first presenter, who is Chantal McCallum. She's our very own Community Cooks Coordinator here at York Region Food Network. So Chantal can't be with us in person at the moment, but she has pre-recorded a video on how to make simple and super delicious refrigerator pickles for all sorts of veggies. So just a reminder to everyone, please type any questions that you may have from this in the chat box or raise your hand, and we will address them at the very end of the workshop. All right, Jess.
Hello, my name is Chantal McCallum, and I'm here today to demonstrate how to make refrigerator pickles. So why would you even bother doing this? Well, since we're talking about zero waste, we're looking at ways in which to utilize those vegetables in your refrigerator that you're really not interested in doing something else with. Maybe you just want to pickle these because they're starting to get a little wrinkly, like this pepper. This cauliflower is starting to discolor just below, and it's a little bit soft and limpy. So great opportunity to pickle this cauliflower as well as the red pepper. And what I would like to show you today, I'm going to move this over to the side for a moment while I show you these items that I've cut already. So we've got red onions ready, and carrots, we can add those to our pickled vegetables as well, or to our jar. So first what we'll do, I'm going to bring over my large container. Actually, before I do that, let's stuff our jar with vegetables. So I'm going to start with these red onions, and in no particular, really it doesn't matter how you put them in there. You stuff them in. You can push as many onions as you'd like. Refrigerated pickles are so easy. And speaking of red onions, they're just really wonderful to put on anything, like sandwiches, tacos, pizza. I just remember putting, as a child, we always had pickles on the table. So pickles really lighten up a meal. If you have a really heavy meal, pickles do tend to make things, it's a little bit of acid that balances the flavors of your meal. And so if you're looking for a way to do that, then you can throw pickled red onions on them. Okay, almost have all of our red onions in here. And then I'll show you how easy this is by having boiled water. You don't even need to use the stovetop unless you want to, and you can boil water there, or you can even use a microwave to boil water. You will need, for a jar this size, you will need 2 cups of boiling water. All right, we're getting there. See, look, I told you we'd get them all in there. They're all in. And you don't need to be concerned about leaving really too much space, but I tend to at least measure below the ridge here of the mason jar. You can use any kind of jar too, by the way. It doesn't have to be a mason jar. Anything you have kicking around, as long as it's a clean jar with a clean lid, not fancy. So bringing this over, boiling water. Measure 2 cups of boiling water. There's 1. So boiling water first, because you're going to add salt and sugar. Now these pickles will not be sweet. Sugar is really there to balance the flavor. So here's our sugar. 2 tablespoons. I have a little onion floating in there. And then 3 teaspoons of salt, which may seem like a lot, but again, you have a large jar. 1 teaspoon. 1, 2. Dissolve the sugar and the salt. As soon as that happens, then you can add the vinegar. You're making a brine. You're going to need 2 cups of vinegar. What I've done here is I've mixed half apple cider vinegar, and any brand will do, and half distilled white vinegar. My favorites are definitely these 2 because apple cider imparts a lovely flavor with your pickles. If you go 100% apple cider vinegar, it's pretty strong. So a little bit of distilled white vinegar, even with red wine vinegar, you can do that combination, or you can do white vinegar only on its own. You don't need to combine them. So there we are. So we have 2 cups of boiling water, 2 tablespoons of sugar, 3 teaspoons of salt, and 1 cup of half and half apple cider and white vinegar. Ready. Pour it in here, mix it all together. And then get your jar of, in this case, the pickled red onions. Pour it on top until you get to the very top, to the edge here. Lovely fruit fly coming for a visit. Wherever there's vinegar, there will be fruit flies. Okay, and then a little bit of a tap just to allow all those bubbles to come to surface. And you can cover the top of the onions. I'll use the other end. There we go. And then put the lid on, and then leave it out on your counter for 30 minutes. Once 30 minutes has passed, pop it in the fridge. Then that's it. It's ready for a month. So it'll last that, well, it won't last that long, especially if you're putting it on everything. Not in my house anyway. Then if we're doing the next one, I'm going to show you, it'll be the same thing. We have a little bit of brine left from the recipe we just did. Look at the result just to see the difference, right? This was made yesterday and refrigerated, and this is fresh. So you'll see this lovely color that comes out of that. Isn't that gorgeous? Love that. All right, then next, these pickles, we can do cauliflower. Just gonna break off the pieces. We've rinsed and washed our cauliflower. You can toss the pieces in there. When I see pickles as a child though, I like the cauliflower and the onions in the bread and butter pickles. That's what we had. Peppers. I tend not to put the onions with these pickles because, well, the onions are pink. They turn everything that color. But I do add, as I made over here, there are a couple garlic cloves sitting at the top. So I've added those to this jar to add, impart a little garlic flavor. And by the way, you can eat the pickles within an hour. You don't have to wait days to eat them, but they do get better as time goes on in the refrigerator. Okay, peppers. Cut them any which way. Okay, I'll have some beautiful color in there. I guess the only thing we're missing is some green. See, last night I found zucchini in my refrigerator that was wasting away, and I didn't want to cook anything. And I'll put this out. We're just shoving them in, pushing them through. Let's throw a few more cauliflowers. Balance it out. There we go. Might have to make a few extra jars with all this extra veg. They'll keep in your refrigerator nicely, of course. There we go. This is now done. We'll start to pour the brine. One of the things that you could add to this, if you're looking to add extra flavors, like maybe you'd like to make it a little spicier, you can add some red pepper flakes, which is always a lovely thing. Peppercorns as well. So because I have half needed with brine, I'm going to measure 1 cup of boiling water and a half a cup of this vinegar mixture. Halving the recipe for this part, and 1 tablespoon of sugar and 1.5 teaspoons of salt. Still checking to see. Yes. I'm doing the half. Where's the half? There it is. Okay. Mix it all up. Oh, I added the vinegar a little earlier, but you know what? It's still dissolving beautifully because the water's still hot. Okay, here we go. We're almost done. Right up to the top. Shake it around, release those bubbles. Put the lid on, and you're done. 1 and 2. Ready to sit for 30 minutes. Enjoy. I look forward to hearing about what you make.
Hi. Okay. So that was our refrigerator pickles with Chantal, and we know her as the pickle queen here. She pickles everything in the office. But we're going to move on from the pickles right now, and I'm going to introduce you a little bit more to Rebecca Alton. She is here with us in person, as she was waving earlier. Rebecca facilitated last week's Greener Giving Gifts in a Jar workshop and has graciously accepted to participate and share some more knowledge with us. So Rebecca is a food lover, always looking for ways to reduce both waste in the kitchen and just in life. She stores everything in jars of every single size and always finds creative ways to reuse materials and give food a longer shelf life. Rebecca runs Square Spoon, a local business that offers the most delicious sorbets ever using seasonal fruits and produce from local farmers. And you can find her at squarespoon.ca. I just wanted to give a shout out to that because I just got the most amazing sorbet. So I just had to share that with you all. So she's going to lead us right now through some exciting techniques on how to preserve foods, along with some recipes on how to make lemon herb salt, some fruit syrup, fruit leather, and we're just going to get right to it. All right.
So we're going to make a lemon herb finishing salt. This is great for putting onto things like fish or onto your vegetables, just to give a little punch of flavor at the end of your cooking for your meal. You just put it on the table as well, and people can add it to whatever they want to. It's really good on potatoes actually too. So the first thing we're going to do is we are going to chop up some herbs. So we have about a 1/4 cup of fresh thyme, a 1/4 cup of sage leaves, and a 1/4 cup of rosemary leaves here. I'm just going to actually dump them all out onto the cutting board, and we're just going to give them a quick through. If you have a food processor and you want to put them all into a food processor and chop them up that way, you can definitely do that. It's a little faster for you. I'm just going to run my knife through really quick for these ones. So there's the thyme. I'm actually just going to leave it on here because I'm going to be mixing it all up anyway. And then we'll do the rosemary next. And same thing, just going to run your knife through it so that you're chopping it up. You want it to be fairly fine, just so we can get all of those flavorful oils, and because we don't want to have big chunks on our salt at the end of this. So there's our rosemary as well, and then we'll do our sage. And this one I'm going to do a little neater. Sage can be tricky. Yep, and like I say, fairly fine. And then we can put them all together and kind of mix them up as we are chopping them a little bit as well. And you want to make sure that your knife is pretty sharp when you're doing this. Just helps them cut a little bit easier, especially when you're working with these herbs that are a bit more woody, which makes them great to work with when you're flavoring salt, but it also means that they take a little bit more effort to chop up really fine. Good. Okay, so then we're going to take all of this onto a tray, just lined with parchment paper, okay? And we're going to dump our salt into the center of the tray. And this is just coarse sea salt. You could use kosher salt, you could use any salt that you really enjoy, but that is nice for more finishing. So not as much the table salts, but a nice flaky salt is really good. And then we're going to put this right on top. Okay. And then we're going to take 4 lemons and we are going to zest them right on top of the salt and the herbs. So I'm using a rasp zester. You could use the smallest side of your box grater as well, but anything that gets it really, really small. And we're just going to go right across the top, nice and light, and it's going to go right into the salt so that as this is zesting, all of those lemon oils are going to go right into the salt again as well, so you're not losing any of that flavor. And even though we are only using the zest, don't throw out your lemons. When you're done with them, just juice them, and then you can save the juice for another use. Again, if you can serve it with fish, or you can add it into any of your fruit desserts as well, just to give it a little extra punch of flavor. And you're trying to make sure that you're not getting any of the white pith as well, because that's pretty bitter. So just making sure you're only getting the peel on the outside. Good, and then just top it off. And then we're just going to use our hands and we're just going to mix it all together. So you want to kind of squish the or pinch the salt between your fingers, getting it flavored with all of the lemon zest and the herbs, that it's really, really well mixed. Oh, it looks so pretty with the yellow and the green all mixed up in there. And it smells amazing. I wish you could smell it right now. Good. Okay, and then from there, just gonna spread it out. So it's in a fairly even layer across the entire tray. And then what we're gonna do is we're gonna put this in our oven at 250 degrees for about 15 minutes. And you wanna leave it in there for that long so that it completely dries out. So after 15 minutes, you can check it and make sure that after it's cooled for a second, so you don't burn your fingers, that it is completely dry. If there's any clumps, you can break them up with your fingers. And then when you're done and the whole thing is completely dry, you can put it into a jar and serve it for dinner. Okay? It's just another nice way of adding some flavor to your meal. So now we're gonna make some fruit syrup. This is a great way of using up some leftover fruit that you have in your fridge, or the last little bits that kind of got shoved to the back corner of the fridge that you then found again that are still good, but they're just getting a little bit soft. So we're going to use 4 cups of fruit. This one is just a bunch of mixed berries that are left over. We're going to put them into a bowl or a pot with half a cup of water. Okay, and I'm going to add some lemon juice with this as well. Depending on what kind of fruit you're using, you can add the lemon or not. You don't have to, but I find that lemon always makes it taste better if you have a little bit of lemon in it. I'm just gonna put a little lemon in there. Good, making sure the seeds stay out as well. And then we're just gonna cook this on the stove for 10 to 15 minutes. And just on a medium heat so that all of the juices can be released and all the fruit can be cooked up a little bit. You can squish it with a fruit, like a potato masher, okay, just to mash it up to release some more of the juices, but at the end of it you want to have kind of like just a fruit puree, okay? And just stir it around a little bit just to make sure it's not going to burn. We're just going to let that sit for a minute. So now that that's all cooked and mashed up, we're going to strain the fruit. So just with a strainer, a very fine mesh strainer though, you don't want to use one that has really big holes so that you're not getting any of the actual fruit solids to go through it. Or you can use some cheesecloth inside a colander and that would work really well as well. Just to, again, you're just making sure that you're getting the juices and you're not getting the fruit itself. So we're going to turn off our oven or stove. And then we're going to carefully pour this through the top. Just make sure you get all the little bits out. Good. And then just gently pressing down on the fruit to make sure you're getting the rest of the juices out. If you were using cheesecloth, you could just let it cool a little bit while it's draining and then squeeze out the rest of the juice that way. And so what you'll end up with is a bunch of the leftover fruit solids inside the strainer here. Okay, and we're going to save those for another use. So don't get rid of them, whatever you do. Good. All right, so on inside. So we're going to take our juice and we're going to pour it back into the pot. Same one you were just using. You don't have to get another one. And then we're going to add 1 cup of sugar. All right. You could do a little bit more or a little bit less depending on how sweet you like things. But you're just going to add some sugar to turn it into an actual syrup. And again, we're just going to stir it. We'll turn the heat back on again just to a medium heat. And then you're just going to again stir this for a while to let the sugars dissolve and so that the syrup thickens just a little bit. Now, depending on what type of fruit you're using, you have to be a little bit careful. So if you're using blueberries have a lot of pectin in them, which is what makes jam or jellies thicken. So if you leave this on for too long, you will end up with blueberry jelly if you take off too much of the water. So again, just periodically stirring it nice and slowly so that the sugars in the bottom don't burn. And you're going to do that for about 10, maybe 15 minutes at the most, depending on how much juice you ended up with. And then that's it. Once it's at the right thickness for you, you can let it cool and then put it into a jar. And these fruit syrups are a great alternative to things like maple syrup on your pancakes or waffles. You could drizzle it over top of ice cream, would be absolutely delicious, or just as a little dipping sauce for fruit slices, however you wanted to use it, depending on what flavors of fruit you have. So now we're going to make a fruit leather using the leftover fruit solids that we had from making our syrup. So I still have all of the solids here in the strainer, and what we're going to do is we're going to blend them actually. So they're pretty mashed up, but just to make it a little bit smoother and work a little nicer, we're just going to dump this into here, and then we're going to blend it just with a hand blender. If you had a food processor or just a regular blender, you could also use that, but anything just to make it a little bit smoother would be great. That's it for that. And then this is super simple. So what you're going to do is you're going to take your fruit puree and you're going to pour it onto, again, some parchment paper or on a tray. Okay. And we're going to spread this out to about 1/4 inch thick. Okay, so fairly evenly. And then what you're going to do is put this into an oven at about 170 degrees. So as low as your oven can go, you're going to turn it on, let it preheat to that, and then you're going to stick this in your oven for 12 to 13 hours. So if you can do it overnight is ideal, because then you're not taking up your oven space for if you're cooking the next day. And as it's doing that, all it's going to do is dehydrate. You could also use a dehydrator for this if you happen to have one, which makes it just a little bit simpler. You don't have to have your whole oven being used for it. And that's pretty much it. So we'll stick it in the oven. And then when it comes out, it's going to be a little bit tacky, but it's also going to be a lot thinner and dry. So this is one that I made actually yesterday. This is just a blueberry one. And just on the parchment paper. And then what you're going to do is you're going to roll it. So you could just take it off and munch it, which I've done. But you could also just roll it up. It's like a giant fruit roller. Okay. And then from there, using scissors, you can cut it into strips. And then that way people can peel it off as they're actually eating it. But it means that you end up with a really nice, tasty snack. Using just what was left over from the syrups that we did before, so that you're not wasting any of the fruit solids there. We're gonna make some croutons next using a bunch of leftover bread. So this is a great way of using up your leftover bread, either that you just have leftover in the freezer that you put there for a bit, or at the end of a meal and you know that the next day it's really not gonna be that great anymore. So what we're gonna do first is we're gonna make we're going to infuse some oil with garlic. So we're going to use 3 tablespoons of olive oil. You could also use butter for this if that's your preference. So we'll do 1 tablespoon. 2 tablespoons. And 3, oh, that was almost perfect. 3 tablespoons of olive oil, just in the pot. And then we're going to use a clove of garlic, so just taking off the outside paper. And then you're going to put it down, put the flat of your knife on it, give it a whack, because it'll give it a nice little smash, and put it into your oil. Then we're going to put it back onto the stove, just over medium heat. And then we're going to let that simmer for about 4 or 5 minutes, just until the garlic is starting to brown a little bit, but not so much that it burns. You don't want to let it burn at all. And then while it's doing that, we're going to cut up our bread. So we have some leftover buns here that we're going to use. And we're going to cut these into cubes. So you want them to be about the same-ish for size. But think like crouton size. So if you want bigger croutons, you can make them bigger. If you want smaller croutons, you can make them smaller. And we're going to get about 2 or 3 cups worth of bread chunks. Okay. And you want them to be as close to the same size as possible so that they cook evenly. Let's see where we're at. So that's actually 3 cups there. So that was just actually 1 bun. So you don't need a lot of bread. You don't need like a half of a loaf or anything. You can, if you have a lot left over, you could do this as a really big batch and just double or triple it. But for today, this is all we're gonna need. So we're gonna put that into the bowl, okay? And we're gonna put half of a teaspoon of salt in here. This is just sea salt, but again, whatever salt you have is fine. So it's half a teaspoon of salt. It's gonna go in with the breadcrumbs. And then let's just check on our oil here. And it's looking pretty good. You can see that it's starting to sizzle a little bit. Good. And then while that's just cooking, I'm just gonna get another tray. Okay. This one's a bit big, but any just baking sheet that you have at home would be great. You could line it if you wanted to for easy cleanup, but you don't really need to for this one, okay? Oh, you can hear it starting to sizzle. And so as it's cooking, all it's really doing is taking that nice garlic flavor and putting it into the oil so that we're not actually using the garlic itself. We're just going to use the oil for our croutons. Perfect. Okay, so we'll turn off the stove. And then we're going to take our garlic and just put it off to the side. You could save that and add it to soup if you wanted to. On top of potatoes. Getting all those little bits out. Okay. Good. And then we're going to take our bread and we're just going to pour the oil on top and give it a stir. So the bread's going to suck up that oil, which is what you want. That's what's going to help give it a nice crispy texture. Good. And you could add other things. You could add some herbs to this if you wanted to as well, or some black pepper. But for today, we're just doing salt and garlic. And then we're going to put this onto the tray and just make sure it's in a single layer so that, again, it's going to cook fairly evenly. Good. And then this is going to go into the oven. So you're going to put your oven at 350 degrees Fahrenheit. And we're going to put this in the oven for about 15 minutes. I would check it every 5 minutes just to see how it's doing and give it a little turn just so that it's going to brown evenly. So we'll stick it back in the oven here. And at the end of it, so at the end, what you end up with is these really nice croutons. Again, these are ones that I made the other day that are super crunchy, really nice. They're perfectly golden, and you can add them to all of your salads or anything else that you want to put your croutons on. It's a great way of using up your leftover bread.
All right. Hold on a quick second. There we go. That was Rebecca. Rebecca, are you with us? That was amazing. I love watching you in the kitchen. It's so amazing to see all of the little techniques and things that you come up with and how you use every little bit. I saw that you like grated the lemon and then you used the lemon juice for the next thing. And it just, it's great to watch. Again, just a note for everybody that all the recipes are going to be sent out in a follow-up email, which will come shortly. And it will be in printable format. You'll have the instructions there. And also a link to watch the video again, should you wish, or if you'd like to share it, you can do that as well. So keep your eyes peeled for that. We're just going to move on to question and answer period right now. I'm sure some people have some questions that they might want to ask in regards to the refrigerator pickles or any of the recipes that Rebecca shared with us. Two things I will note, since Chantal isn't here. She said that the refrigerator pickles will last about 4 weeks once opened and up to 2 months, maybe a little longer, if it's not opened and in the fridge. So good note for everybody. And you have to put them in the refrigerator. So they are not preserved or canned or anything. You can't leave them sitting after that half an hour on the table overnight or for a long period of time. They do actually have to go into the refrigerator. So first question that we have, Rebecca, is what are your suggestions or favorite ways to use the lemon salt?
So I actually primarily put it onto fish, is the one way that I primarily use it, but I also like to sprinkle it onto potatoes. And I leave it on the table so that anybody who wants to use it can. So my kids will put it onto their veggies sometimes because they like to have their veggies be a little bit saltier. And yeah, that's the main ways that I use them, but really anything that has, that complements more of the lemon, actually chicken will be really good. I've done it too. So if you put it onto your roast chicken, instead of just using regular salt, then that gives you a bit more flavor too. And then put a lemon in, take one of your lemons that you zested and then put it inside your chicken as well as when you're roasting it, just to fill that cavity. It would be really nice.
Amazing. And I imagine they would be like a really pretty gift too. Like you could bottle up like some of that gorgeous salt, you know, it looks so pretty, and just, you know, tie the twine or whatever you showed us last time, that little orange, or actually the lemon, a little piece of lemon on it would be so pretty. That's such a nice gift.
Absolutely.
All right. Do we have any more questions? Anyone just raise your hand or just type in the chat below. And Rebecca, if there's any information or anything that you can think of that you want to just add in or share with us, please feel free. I'm putting you on the spot.
No problem. The one thing I did, I put it into the chat, but in case not everyone's got their eye on that, with the fruit syrup that we made, you don't have to turn all of that fruit into a syrup. You could just stop once you've actually cooked it up, add a little bit of sugar or honey or maple syrup or whatever your favorite sweetener is, and just use it as a fruit compote. So rather than straining it out and going through the extra step and having extra fruit, you could just cook it up as it is and then use that. Yeah, and then same thing, like serve it just either as is over top of ice cream, or if you have kids, you can blend it up and call it fruit soup for the winter. And that's how I got my kids to eat some fruit when they were really little in the middle of the winter time. And it's at least warm as opposed to just having something cold. Yeah, but just something, another way that you can add something into it. I'm just seeing another question there of how long the fruit leather will last. You've got about a week. You can stick it in the fridge and it'll last a little bit longer than that, but about a week would probably do it. Yeah, and it partially depends on how dehydrated it is. So like if it's really sticky, then a little less time. The more moisture is in it, then the less time you have, the drier it gets. You don't want it to be brittle, but the drier it gets, the more time you have with it.
And do you, like, I could send that with my kids to school, right? Like in their lunch.
Yeah, instead of I forget what they're called. I think it's like fruit by the foot or something. And it's literally the same thing where it's like a fruit roll up that's been cut, and these ones are long, but you can just make your own and absolutely throw it in their lunches. There's nothing wrong with it. Just don't put nuts in it.
Yeah, true. I was really excited about the syrup because I never thought of doing like a fruit syrup or anything like that before. You know, we have amazing maple syrup here, so we use that for everything. But then when I saw this, I was just thinking, how nice that would be with like a pancake or waffle and some yogurt and that syrup. Oh my goodness, it's making my mouth water just thinking about it. It's so good.
Yeah, a little bit of plain yogurt or a little bit of leftover sour cream actually, and then throw some pecans on top of those pancakes or waffles. Oh my gosh.
Sounds delectable. Delectable. Anyways, I'm seeing that there's not that many questions today. So, I mean, I think that you covered everything so well that we don't have too much to go over. So we'll probably end it out a little bit early. And I'll just let everybody know that we will have a recording of this, and we'll put it on the YouTube channel, but we will send it along with all of the notes and recipes and instructions in a follow-up email. So there you go. Thanks again, Rebecca, so much. And I want to thank Chantal, who's not here, but I just need to give her a big thumbs up for sharing that recipe and tutorial with us as well. And thank you guys all for joining us and participating. We are so happy to have you on this journey to zero waste with us. And we will have another workshop coming up, I believe, next Tuesday. Keep your eyes peeled and we'll fill you in with more information. Bye, everybody.